After 2 wonderful days in Venice, we left the maze of canals in search of the next adventure, a landscape I dreamed of for years. The Dolomites in northern Italy. Jagged peaks, wandering trails, villages tucked between the cliffs. This was the adventure I'd been waiting for. The further north we got, the higher we were, the more the anticipation built. I kept envisioning what it would feel like to stand beneath those mountains, camera in hand, searching for my bucket list shot of Cime under a sky full of stars. I was excited. I love road trips, especially through the mountains, and picking up the car made the trip feel so much more real. When we finally arrived at the rental car place after missing our bus stop, it was actually incredibly easy to get our vehicle.
The drive to Ortisei from our rental car place was around 3.5 hours. We spent most of the day driving, listening to Harry's house, taking in the scenery, and of course stopping for lunch.
And I quickly became used to the mountainous roads that took us all the way to our hotel.
We were staying in Hotel Prager. We had a lovely view from our room and it was perfect for our stay. A classic alpine lodge with matching views.
We arrived close to golden hour and decided to meet up with our friend Julia right away to shoot sunset from Passo Sella.
It was really cool seeing how the sun setting changed the colors of the mountains. This was the first time that I switched my telephoto lens and I was nervous that I was going to break something in the process. But Callum and Julia were very supportive and I didn't break anything.
We quickly lost the light to the massive shadows of the Alps all around us. Julia knew of another spot deeper in the mountains that we would still have sun for a while, so we continued up and up. Welcome to Val Gardena, or Val Gardena. The views were absolutely incredible. I set up my camera to take a time lapse and then flew my drone to explore the area even more, trying to grasp the sheer magnitude of the mountains around me.
I loved Passo Gardena. This was one of my favorite locations in the Dolomites. How you could see the towns light up below and watch cars wind through the mountain roads. It was a bit chilly up there, but it was nice just to spend time with Callum and Julia.
These mountains were unlike any I had seen before. So much more jagged, more raw. They seemed younger somehow than the mountains in Canada. For the first time, I also began noticing alpine glow. The faint glow the tallest mountains pick up after the sun has set but the sky is still a bit golden. The sunset from Val Gardena gave me a different appreciation for what it meant to explore golden hour in the mountains. I couldn't wait for the rest of our trip, chasing the light of sun and stars.
We all went to dinner at Ronda. The pizza was so good. I highly recommend this place if you were ever in Ortisei.
The charcoal pizza was unlike anything I had tried for pizza before, which felt fitting for having pizza in Italy. It was delicious. It was also wonderful catching up with Julia, getting a glimpse of what it would be like to live in this incredible place. We went back to our lodge and I debated setting up a time lapse to capture the stars, but decided against it because I was so tired, which I ended up regretting given how many nights of our trip ended up being cloudy, except thankfully for the jewel of the trip at Cime, but more on that later.
The next morning, we had an amazing hotel breakfast before heading into town.
We walked down the hill, explored Ortisei, and went into a few outdoor shops because Taylor needed a water bottle before our hiking days. After the outdoor store, we headed to Cafe Adler and just soaked in the alpine life.
The macchiato latte was so good. I had such a nice time on the patio looking into the town.
We headed to lunch at Snaten. It was a classic Sud Tirolean menu with rich, high-caloric food. It makes sense. Walking these hills all day requires a lot of energy. It was delicious.
We shared a salad and I got a South Tyrol dish called Tris de Balas. They were like rich dumplings with different fillings and they were very good.
After lunch, we headed back to the hotel to regroup before heading to Alpe di Siusi for sunset. We decided to drive around the mountain rather than take the cable car because it closed at sunset so we wouldn't be able to get good shots. To actually reach Alpe di Siusi, literally named for its view of the Swiss Alps, we left our car in the parking lot and hiked the winding roads. It took about an hour to get there, but it was easy hiking and the views were worth it.
Alpe di Siusi is one of my favorite places in the Dolomites. It was so peaceful with the rolling hills and the mountainous backdrop.
I set up a time-lapse of the mountain and started flying the drone to explore the area more. This was my first time really exploring with it, and I was blown away at the controller, the distance, and the quality of the Mini 3 Pro compared to the Mini 2, my previous drone. It was a massive upgrade.
While Callum was setting up his time-lapse, I took photos of some flowers and just admired the scenery.
A woman came out of her house and was saying it's even more beautiful there at sunrise. Unsurprisingly, it made me want to go back for sunrise.
When Callum finished with his time-lapse, we walked faster back to our car, trying to make it back before it was fully dark and also back to town before all of the restaurants closed, which happened surprisingly early in the mountains.
We made it back just in time to go to Cascade for dinner. I had been planning on waking up for sunrise, and my alarm went off at 4:30 so we could go back to Alpe di Siusi. But when I looked outside, it looked super foggy, so we decided to go back to sleep and go to Seceda instead. One of the best decisions we made on this trip.
It was calling for rain in the afternoon, so we knew we needed to head to Seceda in the morning.
We rode the 2 cable cars up to the top of Seceda, but when we reached the top, it was incredibly foggy. I was a bit nervous we wouldn't see anything, but it was also a very cool, moody environment. After hiking to the viewpoint, or what we thought was the viewpoint, we ended up standing with a nice couple who were also photographers, setting up tripods and waiting for the fog to clear. If it weren't for them, we never would have known where the mountains even were. I set up my camera and took some time lapses and set up waiting.
We waited for 2 hours and I'm so glad that we did. It was really cool seeing the clouds get trapped in the crevices of the mountain.
All of a sudden, the wind picked up a bit and the fog began to lift. Layer by layer, the mountains of Seceda began to reveal themselves to us. It was beautiful. I'm pretty sure this is the exact spot that the mountain emoji comes from, which made it all a little surreal. Seceda has been on my bucket list ever since I first began shooting photography, so it was amazing actually experiencing it.
On our way back to the cable car, we saw a couple of cute marmots before heading back down to town.
At the base of the hill, Julia picked us up and we headed for lunch at Mendel. After Julia dropped us back off at our hotel, we went into the sauna in the hotel before heading back out to shoot sunset at Chiesa di San Giacomo. It was fun exploring the area. A baby deer showed up and was eating the wildflowers. It was also serene. I did the classic and set up my camera for a time lapse while flying the drone. It was truly like I was in the misty mountains, watching the clouds form around the mountaintops in their own microclimates. The scale of these places is mind-blowing.
This was one of my favorite days. After having an amazing strudel for breakfast, we drove 1.5 hours to hike the Funes Huttë.
It was interesting driving through the national park of Funes, a bit different environment than the Alps we had seen so far. Beautiful to have both forest and mountains in such close proximity.
Before starting the hike, we parked and grabbed lunch at Berggasthaus Pederu. We were leaving our car here overnight since we would be staying at the Funes Huttë that night.
The food was good and I was starving. When you hike this much, you need to keep up your energy, otherwise everything starts to feel overwhelming.
The hike itself was so beautiful. It was originally calling for rain, but the fog was disappearing by the time we actually started our hike. The trail itself was a combination of dirt paths and loose rock. The rock was white like the city of Gondor, and there was some interesting foliage that kind of looked like trees but were actually bushes.
The hike was a series of switchbacks up a steady incline. There were some periods that were flatter, but it was pretty consistent all the way to Funes Huttë.
The hike took us the majority of the afternoon. I'm glad we didn't start any later than we did. Even though hiking can be a bit of a struggle for me, I really loved it. It's really rewarding to feel like I conquered something when I finish a hike, plus I love being in nature. When we arrived to the Rifugio, we came in through the back, and we had to take our boots off. But where they ask you to store your boots is on ski boot warmers, which I actually thought was really cool.
It felt quaint, like the perfect starting point to go deeper into the mountains.
We checked into our room, changed out of our hiking clothes, and headed down to dinner. Oh, hi. We had half board, which means we got the room, dinner, and breakfast included in our stay. The food here was actually so good.
I've been really impressed with the quality of the food at places so deep in the mountains. After dinner, we explored the area for a bit, checking out the nearby lakes. It was so much nicer walking around without my hiking gear. She went to bed, but I was just putting on my warm gear to head back out to shoot the stars. I explored for a while, trying to find a clear view of the Milky Way, but it was kind of foggy. I eventually decided to shoot a time-lapse of the place Taylor was sleeping, which felt cozy and fitting. In a way, it felt like she was part of it with me. I love sitting and watching the stars once my time-lapse has been set up. It's a beautiful balance of experiencing the moment while also capturing it.
We woke up for sunrise. It was cool seeing how inspired Callum was here.
I went down to the lake to try and get a reflective sunrise time-lapse and flew the drone again to try and find some bright orange mountaintops. The colors were a bit mild, but still beautiful, and I love watching the fog form in different pockets around the mountains with my drone.
After a nice breakfast, we did a brief hike up to Lago di Limo. I'm glad we went up here before we headed back down.
The lake was a cool green color, worth the walk up from the Huttë.
It was an interesting environment. It seemed like it might rain, but it was also kind of sunny and also misty. It was a really beautiful descent down the mountain.
Everything was so moody, it made for beautiful photography.
One of my favorite parts was when we saw shepherds herding their cows. It was really interesting seeing what life must be like as a shepherd on this mountain. We just stood there as the cows ran around us. I love them.
When we got to the bottom, we went back to Passo for lunch. I left Taylor with our stuff on the patio as I went to go fly my drone. I wanted to get a glimpse of the journey, going back up the mountain a bit to explore. But on the way down, as I was trying to get a cool panning shot of myself in the mountains, I flew my drone into a tree. Even worse, it got stuck up there, about 12 feet up.
I was enjoying my latte macchiato when I saw Callum running for the giant walking stick in the distance.
I was able to stand on a little hill and knock my drone out of the tree. Shockingly, it wasn't damaged at all. We drove the hour to Hotel Lago di Braies.
Our room had an unreal view of the lake.
What do you think?
That is like a really great view. Wild stuff. I thought you were going to get an obstructed view.
I was like, oh, I hope we get all the way to the left because then we can get a nice clear shot, but this looks just wild.
It was hard to believe that we were at Lago di Braies. This is somewhere I had wanted to visit since I first got Instagram.
We headed down to the lake for sunset and took quite a few photos of the beautifully reflective lake. I also flew my drone for a bit to get a better perspective of the lake. The mountains must have been interfering with the signal because I had a moment of intense panic where I completely lost signal and thought I lost the drone. Thankfully, the obstacle avoidance did its job this time and I was able to fly back safely. I really do need to learn more about the limits of this drone. We went back to the room and I set up a time lapse from the balcony. I love having views like this from the room so I can set up my camera and go to dinner or for a walk.
This dinner was incredible. My questioning. What does this mean?
Yeah.
I don't even know.
And?
It's good.
Is it a pear?
I don't know what it is.
This is some kind of mousse.
There's definitely pear in it. I was so surprised. I thought this was an actual pear, and I had no idea how I was supposed to be able to eat this with a spoon. I was surprised when I discovered it was actually chocolate with cream and pear inside. This was still amazing.
After dinner, Taylor went to bed, but I went out exploring for some astrophotography. One of the major benefits of staying at the hotel itself is that you get access to the lake after sunset and before sunrise. I was determined to get some cool shots with this access. I tried finding the Milky Way, but it was kind of difficult since the mountains blocked so much. I think it would have been better in the middle of June to get the Milky Way directly above the mountains. Either way, it was incredibly serene, walking around and just taking it all in, alone down by the lake at night.
We decided to make the most of our stay and spent the day around the lake, relaxing and taking photos. Callum flew his drone and took many time lapses. It was nice how we had the lake to ourselves before it opened to tourists. When the tourists arrived, we could continue to enjoy our views with the peace of our balcony.
It even started snowing on one of the mountains, which was cool to see it get dusted with white. It felt like we got to experience Lago di Braies in both fall and winter. I spent the afternoon just enjoying the views from the room, while also taking some much needed time to learn how my drone worked and reviewing my footage from the trip so far, so I could learn more about the style I was building out.
Callum set up another time lapse, but this time starting from sunset to night, before we headed for another dinner in the hotel.
Rather than going down to the lake for Astro, I wanted to see what I could get from the room. I think it turned out pretty well. We woke up for sunrise before the Lago di Braies opened to the public. We prioritized taking sunrise photos of the lake before heading to breakfast. It was beautiful. I got some great shots of the morning light first hitting the top of the mountains. Again, it was such a great perk to be there before the masses showed up.
We decided to take a day trip to Obereggen. This is where we were picking up a gondola to visit Kronplatz. Unexpectedly, this also ended up being one of my favorite days.
It was cool taking so many gondolas all the way up to the top of the mountain. We were heading to Cime soon for a lot of hiking, so I was more than happy to take this ride and save some energy while still getting the views.
We started our day at the Messner Mountain Museum. This museum is built on the side of a mountain dedicated to mountaineering. It was actually really eye-opening. I never really thought about what life was like for the original mountaineers and what their equipment was like.
Hiking mountains is one of my favorite things to do, so it was incredibly impressive to learn more about the history of those that came before us.
We had an incredible lunch at Alpine. This restaurant is right across from the Messner Mountain Museum and in the Lumen Museum. The vibe inside was really nice. Nothing like amazing food with amazing views. I had a dumpling and another apple strudel.
I had the ravioli and a mock egg. It was named one of the most beautiful restaurants in the Alps, and I could definitely see why.
The Lumen Museum is now one of my favorite museums in the entire world. It was cool to see how photography has evolved and mountain photography specifically. People used to carry up to 50-kilogram cameras to document their experience.
After learning more about the mountaineers in the first museum, it was cool having an entire museum dedicated specifically to the photography side of it. Back in the day, people used to hire painters, or were painters themselves, to come with them up the mountain to capture proof they had reached the top. Photography changed all of that, providing the earliest forms of proof on who actually completed the climb. It was both humbling and inspiring, one of my favorite types of experiences.
Some of my favorite parts of the museum were this room of mirrors that played different footage of mountain photography throughout.
When we exited the museum, we watched some paragliders jumping off the mountain. I took some more photos at the top and a time lapse before we headed down to the gondola again. It was our last night at Braies, and I wanted to shoot one last sunset. Since it was our last night, I thought we should explore the hotel a bit before packing up to head to Cime. Cool to think that kings and queens would visit places like this.
I woke up not feeling very well. I was sad that I wasn't feeling 100% for something that I really looked forward to, and I was nervous about hiking while sick.
It's a very accessible place to go hiking, which I think is one of the reasons it has become so popular. That said, there were only 300 parking spots up at the top, so I was very happy that we got there early enough to get a spot and not have to hike another 1.5 kilometers up the mountain. We grabbed all of our gear and everything we needed for the next 2 nights at the Rifugio. It was shockingly cold.
The walk to our Rifugio was actually really easy. It was relatively flat and had views of the backside of Cime itself. We checked in, grabbed a tea, and then we went back out exploring.
I felt myself getting more and more excited. This was a place I had dreamed of visiting for years, and it was finally happening. I also kept flipping between photography mode and astrophotography planning mode, tracking the position of the Milky Way in the different areas we hiked, trying to scope out the best place to capture the Milky Way rise over Cime. It is truly one of the most majestic mountains I've ever seen. We continued exploring for a while, scoping out locations, and generally just taking it all in. I couldn't believe the color of the sky, which was almost black because we were so high up in the mountains. Then, we went back down to Lavaredo for dinner. While Taylor went to bed, I put on all of the clothes I had, knowing that I was in for a long and cold night, which was about an hour hike back up the mountain. It actually took me quite a while to get the focus on the stars, a mix of being cold, shaky from the hike, and nervous to capture the moment I'd been dreaming of for years. It did not disappoint. The transition from Blue Hour to the Milky Way was awesome, in the literal sense of the word. I kept thinking how lucky I was to be up there watching one of the most incredible sights of my life. Everywhere I looked, there was a beautiful blanket of stars draped across the sky, with the prime focus of the Milky Way aligned perfectly with Cime, taking thousands of photos to stitch into a time-lapse. After I took the time-lapse, I spent another hour getting a full pano of the sky and mountains, trying to capture the scale as best I could. I've actually never shared this photo in public before, but here is the final result. My first true astro pano that I had been dreaming of for years. I hope you like it. I lasted up there for as long as I could, until around 2 a.m. when I started making my way back down the mountain. It was kind of wild because the snow that had been melting during the day froze at night, so I had to be extremely careful on my way down over the ice. I made it down with no problems and then went back into the Rifugio that an employee had thankfully remembered to leave open for me and settled in to sleep. It was one of the best nights of my life, and I will remember that feeling of looking up at the Milky Way over Cime forever.
When I woke up, I felt even worse. We decided it would be better for us to check out early and stay in a hotel. We walked back to our car and I sat in the warmer environment and read my book while Callum went for a hike.
After making sure Taylor was comfortable in the car in the sun, I went for a walk around the final stretch of the Cime loop I hadn't seen yet. It was a lovely morning hike. Perfect timing to do it in the morning before it got too hot. Being this close to the face of Cime was pretty wild. It's amazing how it just juts out of the earth like that, giving it the true name of Three Peaks. I flew my drone around, took a time lapse, and generally just enjoyed the morning taking it all in while hoping Taylor was okay back in the car.
I went on my booking.com app and found a place we could stay nearby in San Candido. Sole Paradiso had a spa with a steam room that I thought might help me get better quicker. When we arrived, they ended up upgrading us to a suite for no extra cost, and I was very thankful. It was exactly what I needed.
After checking in, we went for lunch at Pizzeria Ristorante Helm Hotel. The pizza was incredible. I think my favorite one yet. I figured I would make the most of our change in plans and look for a location to take another Milky Way time-lapse. We were directly north of Cime National Park, so I hoped I could shoot south into the dark sky zone. We toured the area until I found a place that I could easily return to that night.
We spent the remainder of the afternoon in the hotel spa. It was nice to be warm and relax.
We had dinner in the hotel, which was quite good. I was thankful for a full quality meal after so much hiking. After dinner, I headed out to shoot astro while Taylor slept. It was a beautiful view of the village below, even though I had a moment of pure terror when a cow walked by in the dark.
Sole Paradiso had an amazing breakfast. I really loved my warm pancake and yogurt. After breakfast, we checked out and headed to Hotel Costes.
We weren't that far from Val Gardena, and I never got a Milky Way time-lapse there, so we decided to head back up to Val Gardena for sunset and meet up with Julia again. I did my now classic combo of setting up a time-lapse at the sunset and flying my drone to explore more. I got a much clearer glimpse of alpine glow, the afterglow that illuminates the mountains after the sun had set. Beautiful. We wanted dinner, but I also wanted to get an astro time-lapse. These tended to be in conflict throughout our trip. I decided to hike up the mountain for a bit and find a secluded spot to hide my camera amongst the hills. I set it up, checked the settings, and then ran back down the mountain to grab Taylor and head to dinner.
We went down the road for dinner at Chalet Girard, and I really enjoyed my meal and the vibe.
We headed back to my camera, which was still there thankfully, and watched the Milky Way for a little while before driving back to Hotel Costes for the night. We were running out of days, and this was a big photography trip for me, so I got up for sunrise despite being exhausted from 3 nights of astrophotography. I also flew my drone while my time-lapse was running to get a better sense of the area we were in. I missed the main color of the mountains, but watching the village below slowly defrost as the sun hit was so serene. As the village woke up, people would walk by and say hi. Everyone is so friendly here.
After breakfast, we headed to Hotel Obereggen in Obereggen. I'm finally starting to feel better, but not 100%.
The drive to Obereggen was gorgeous. We went through a thin pass in the mountains with incredible panoramic views everywhere. I love the Dolomites.
After checking into our hotel, we headed to the chairlift and went for another fantastic lunch, but this time at Oberholz. The food was so good and I loved the aesthetic. I had a really good pumpkin soup and pasta.
I had dumplings and a latte macchiato.
We had another afternoon of wellness back at our hotel. It's been really great that the spa facilities have been included in all of our stays.
After our spa afternoon, I headed out to shoot sunset on the side of the mountain. I wasn't alone. There was a whole herd of coos walking around, their majestic red hair catching the golden hour light perfectly. I was torn between getting the sunset time-lapse I wanted and also getting some cool shots of the coos. I decided to do a bit of both, and I'm happy I did. I found another hidden spot in the hills to set up my camera for an astro time-lapse.
This was our last full day in the Dolomites. We had a nice hotel breakfast and drove half an hour to Lago di Carezza for sunrise, early enough that there weren't a lot of people. It was actually really peaceful.
I was hoping for a beautiful sunrise over the mountains, but all we got was fog. I sent my drone up to see if I could find the sun, and I did. I could see it was about a 10-minute drive up the hill, so we packed up and left to go find the sun. We then went back to the room to check out and decide on our final stop. Did we head back to the Venice area, taking our time, or did we loop back a bit further north to check out the last location on my Dolomites bucket list, the place that first introduced me to this majestic mountain range, Val di Funes?
This was a really nice town. We grabbed lunch on the patio of Hotel and Restaurant Venice. The food and its presentation were really good.
We headed to a viewpoint where we could see the Chiesa di San Giovanni and fly my drone. This was the view that first inspired me to go to the Dolomites all those years ago, so it was the perfect way to finish off our 2-week trip.
As we stood in the sun, I was thinking about how much I loved our trip to the Dolomites. There is something so majestic being in the mountains, embracing nature and wellness.
Being in mountains like the Dolomites just hits different. The world moves at a different pace, with a different scale. Time seems to slow, and it's easier to breathe in the fresh alpine air. The perspective and scale leads to great opportunities for mindful awareness, of being present. The perfect place to recalibrate after a busy few months of work, while giving me perspective on my life and what I want out of it. This trip was one I had dreamed of for years, and it felt wonderful to leave being so creatively inspired and motivated to make a change in my life, a change that I had been putting off for far too long. I'm also glad I got to experience this dream with Taylor, showing her a deeper glimpse of why I love the mountains and the Milky Way.
If you would like to do this trip, check out the itinerary in the description below.
If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing with a friend. We're working on making YouTube our full-time careers, so any support you can give us is very much appreciated. Now, after a few trips to the mountains, it was time for a change of pace, bringing Taylor to a continent she's never been to. See you in Colombia.
Am I allowed to enter now?
Yeah.
Cool.
Hello.
Venice.
Are you cold?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you?
Yeah.